Hello and welcome to this week's crypto update. So what's been happening in the market? What do we see happening next and where do we go from here? So there's, as usual, a huge amount happening at the moment. Since Trump's been in power, it's just a daily news cycle, and the market is moving very much in step with this. One day we have talk of tariffs, the markets go down. Next day we have talk of the Bitcoin strategic reserve and Bitcoin goes up. So it's really a non-stop movement here, but I think it's really important to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Here on the chart, you can see, the daily chart. So each bar here represents one day. You can see here where we had the 8-month sideways. We had a huge upturn, and then we've gone into what I would say here is there's this channel where we're bouncing between sort of 92, 93,000 up to sort of 95, 96. Of course, we went to either side of that, but in general, that was the channel. Then we saw a lot of sideways action here for quite a number of days, nearly 2 weeks. And then we had the tariffs announced by Trump. The market reacted, both the S&P, the stock market, and Bitcoin reacted negatively to that. It dropped as low as 78,000, as we can see here. Then it was just starting to recover, and we heard about the Bitcoin strategic reserve for the US. It took off. Since then, it's sort of bobbling around, and now we I suppose what's happening next is there is there is a crypto event happening now in the White House, crypto summit, where some of the biggest names in crypto have been invited to the summit, and where we're being told that there's going to be some very significant announcements around the whole crypto space. So what's happening? So first of all, we've got this Bitcoin, it's in around 90,000 right now, and has moved up to that off the back of speculation around Trump's crypto summit. So the White House crypto summit is scheduled for tomorrow, Friday, where key figures from the cryptocurrency industry, including CC of Binance, but there's the head of Coinbase, of Cardano, of Ripple, many of the big names in crypto are going to be at this event. What's happening there? It's reported that President Trump is going to unveil a national crypto reserve strategy with a specific focus on Bitcoin, where there are posts suggesting Trump has made substantial personal investments in Bitcoin and Ethereum. These claims will be unverified. But basically, the bottom line is here. A number of days ago, they spoke about having a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Then they spoke about having a crypto strategic reserve, which would also include not just Bitcoin, but Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, and XRP. Closer to the time, we've just got this from the US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He has said that he's confirmed that Trump administration will unveil plans for a Bitcoin strategic reserve. So Bitcoin is, going to be the reserve on its own, but that the other coins like Ripple and Solana and so on that were mentioned will have a special place, but not necessarily in this reserve. And I think that will be responded to far more positively than having the mixed bag, because Bitcoin, it doesn't have an owner. It's, it's not specific to any country. It's limited. And so it makes sense to have as a strategic reserve, similar to gold, and many countries would have that in a reserve. However, having other coins in there that do have owners, and owners who are very much trying to put their influence across when meeting the likes of Trump over the last number of weeks and months, having that in a Bitcoin strategic reserve, I don't think it doesn't look good, and I don't think it would be right. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes tomorrow, if it's announced at all. So at the moment, I think a certain amount of that's already priced in, that this announcement would be made. And so here's the thing in the short term. If he announces a Bitcoin strategic reserve, will that be positive to the market? You would expect so, but I think some of it's priced in, but you would expect to see a positive momentum for Bitcoin. If you were to have that and state that there's going to be no capital gains on crypto, for example, if you hold them for a year or more, and this is something that's rumored, then that would have a very significant additional positive effect. And of course, if he was to come out and say, actually, tariffs are not going ahead, then I think we could see the market really move very strongly, however long that might last. However, I think it's more likely that what if he doesn't announce all of those things? What if the trades war is very much still in go, which I'd expect it would be. And, if he doesn't announce the tax part of the equation, Or what if he doesn't even announce the crypto reserve? What will happen to the market then? I think if none of them get mentioned, we could see a very significant pullback, even further back than we've been. Though I do think we'll see some really positive crypto stuff there. So I think overall it's likely to be positive, but positive for how long? I think what's going on in the bigger picture here is what's happening short term doesn't really matter unless you're a trader, not really. And we're not traders, we're looking at investing. So from an investor longer standpoint of view, what's happening here and why does it matter? I think for this, we have to look at crypto in general, macro crypto, and then overall macro environment. In crypto in general, lots of positive things happening, some really good projects out there, plenty of development and plenty more to get excited about, I believe. Outside of that, you have macro crypto, which is what we're talking about here, where, you know, we are in a positive crypto environment we couldn't even have dreamed of a year ago, not to mind a number of years ago. Now we have the President of the United States who is coming out utterly pro Bitcoin, pro crypto in general, very actively bringing in very positive crypto people into the administration and moving forward, it appears, with everything he promised and more regarding crypto on the run to the elections. So unbelievably positive for crypto in the crypto macro environment. Outside of that, and you know, with that, you'd have to say the market should be buzzing. It should be absolutely taking off, and there should be no stopping from here with just that in mind. But when you go out into the further, the macro, overall macro environment, so I'm talking about the US economy, the Chinese economy, the world economy, and liquidity flow overall, what's happening. So if you look at the US right now, the Fed, who are in charge of that monetary policy, have to decide, okay, their goal is to bring inflation down further. It's starting to creep up, and maintain a good jobs market and a good economy. What's happening at the moment is the jobs market has been pretty solid all along, if you believe the numbers they've been putting out, which is questionable, but let's assume we do. Then the jobs market has been pretty strong, but inflation is increasing. So those two things would suggest, if anything, they shouldn't be reducing interest rates or maybe even considering raising them to try and tame inflation at a time when the US economy is maintaining strength. However, at the same time, we now have Trump, who's brought in tariffs. Tariffs are seen to be inflationary, certainly on the short term. So that's going to make inflation go up even higher, potentially. And certainly in the short term, you would expect it would. So a lot of this then depends on how long will these tariffs be in place. So a lot of people thought that Trump was bluffing with the tariffs, that he was just saying this, you know, the art of the deal, saying he's going to bring them in, get what he wants, and then takes them out. But everyone knows now about the art of the deal and how Donald Trump operates. So he's had to go further. He's had to actually bring in the tariffs and put them in place. The question now is, how long will they be in place in order for him to get his deal done, or will they be an all-out trade war? Of course, if there's an all-out trade war, this is going to be hugely detrimental to the overall economies, and certainly the US economy. And so inflation could continue to go up higher and higher. Is this a situation there where the US Fed can reduce interest rates? Usually in that environment, they would be increasing interest rates. At the same time, the jobs market in the US certainly appears to be changing for a number of reasons. First of all, it has already started to show weakness, and we can see that here in these numbers. You know, the average was 375,000 a month extra jobs during the 2022 downturn, has slowed dramatically, averaging only 150,000 a month since May, and ultimately leaving the economy more exposed to market-driven disruptions. Now, add into that we've got DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk, and their job is to reduce spending. And part of that is they are stopping increasing, bring in any more employees, in fact, planning to cut many. And when you consider that a huge proportion of the jobs being added over the last number of years were government jobs, if you stop hiring and in fact do the opposite and start firing, then your jobs numbers get much weaker. So now, in an environment where your jobs market and the overall economy is starting to show weakness, that's an area where you would reduce interest rates. But when you have inflation increasing, that's an area where you would increase them. So what does the Fed do? Do they save the economy or fight inflation? All this in an overall macro environment where the dollar is really strong. While the dollar is strong, this is another really strong negotiating tool for Donald Trump, particularly when talking to the likes of China. China need their currency to stay pegged to the dollar. While the dollar is strong, it means they can't add liquidity into their own economy, because then it will form a depeg between the dollar and the yen. They can't afford this to happen, or the Chinese currency. So what do? Well, Trump is now in a very strong negotiating position where he has put tariffs on China, and the dollar is strong. Both are not good for the Chinese economy. The Chinese domestic market has shown huge signs of weaknesses over the last couple of years. When you put in tariffs, that then makes it difficult for them to export. So now both external and internal markets are struggling. Add into the fact that they can't add stimulus because of a strong dollar, they're now in a bind and need, you would imagine, to make a deal. If Trump can get what he wants from that deal, he can then remove the tariffs and also reduce the dollar, the strength of the dollar. Both will be beneficial to China. It will then allow them to print as much as they want, add liquidity, which they've done before in the absolute trillions. Were they to do that again, it would help bring back their economy, but also add massive liquidity into the world economy. At the same time, in that situation where Trump were to take off tariffs, it would mean inflation would have a huge chance of starting to reduce. At the same time of the US economy, struggling due to the job situation and what Doge is doing, that would be an environment then where the Fed could print as much as they want, because that's their environment. Interest rates coming down, the overall market showing weakness. During this time, you would expect there would have been a pullback in the overall stock market as well. This would be the perfect opportunity for them to come out and absolutely print to their heart's content. What would that do? Well, for risk on assets all over the world, all this massive additional liquidity would have a really positive effect on risk on assets. You'd expect the likes of Bitcoin to go to absolutely to the races on an upward curve, and for the good crypto projects out there to follow. So my base case is this: I think we see the trade war going on for a little while. I think we see issues starting to show in the US economy, which can certainly have a negative effect on risk on like the stock market and crypto. I think we can see Bitcoin coming back further again, not in a day or 2 days, but over time, and go on a sideways trend at those sort of levels, between sort of 69 and 85 to 90. We could see a sideways channel there for a little while. At the same time, alts will get further crushed, giving huge opportunity for people to be able to buy into them. Then we see the trade war, all going well, ending. Hopefully, peace being brought in a couple of areas in the world with this, and a weaker dollar. Then we see the Fed print, and we have the mother of all altcoin seasons. That's my base case. Of course, it doesn't mean it's going to work out like that, because there's so many ifs, ands, and buts. But certainly, it's worth keeping an eye on what's going on in the macro environment. Some people might suggest, why do you talk about the macro environment when you're, want to talk about Bitcoin or crypto? It's because it's heavily tied. And so again, I've spoke about this. This is a really interesting chart, and here is why I think it's so important to be have an understanding what's happening in the macro environment, because of course institutional investing is directly correlated with that, and as we can see from here, institutional investment is now directly correlated to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the white line here. The blue line is retail investors in Bitcoin, and the red line is institutional investment in crypto. You can see the blue line is pretty much on a straight, on a strong curve upwards, bar since Bitcoin hit that sort of 100 grand mark. But you see the red line, it correlates extremely closely to Bitcoin. In other words, when institutions are buying, Bitcoin's going up. If institutions stop buying, as we see here, they actually sold off once we hit the last sort of range of that 60, 65, 70,000 mark. We can see they sold off, took profits. They started buying back in, and lo and behold, we took off again. And really interestingly, we can see when we hit this 100 grand range, it's retail that have sold off, and who bought it? Institutions. So the bottom line is we need to keep a close eye on what's happening in the macro environment to have a true understanding of what's going to happen next within crypto. That's what we're doing here, and all the while finding the right projects to invest in to prepare for what I believe is going to be a huge upward cycle when the time is right. Is that next, in the next couple of days, the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months? My base case is it's going to take at least a number of weeks, maybe months. But who knows? This thing could take off tomorrow. And certainly, I think there's every chance of seeing a pump after this crypto summit in the White House tomorrow. Let's see. Hopefully found that useful. One last thing I want to point out. For people that either haven't been in a previous cycle or people who tend to forget what happened before, this is, Bitcoin, there was talk about this when Bitcoin had come from 109,000 down to 80. Obviously, it's bounced up from there. But it's, it was down 27%. And a lot of people were going, oh, whoa, Bitcoin's dead and, the market's gone or we missed the altcoin season. Well, if you look at this is just normal standard practice in bull runs. These are all various pull downs, drawdowns that have happened in Bitcoin during bull markets, not during downward markets, but bull markets. We have seen, if you go back as far as just 17, it was even bigger numbers before that, but you can see a 33% drawdown, 39, 41, 30. In fact, all of them were bigger than the 27% drawdown we've just had. So it's no big deal. This is standard practice. We should understand and realize that, prepare for that. Take the opportunities to buy into projects that have pulled back and given us those buy opportunities. And at the same time, as long as you have belief in the overall structure of crypto and where it's going to go, if you believe that's an upward cycle, then as an investor, this is easy. Find really good projects, invest into them, DCA in when you get the opportunities, and sit back and let the market do what it does. Finally, here's a chart of the various prices of Bitcoin following Bitcoin halvings. And you can see the purple one here, of course, straight after halving. This is back in 2012 when the market cap overall was really small, so it was easier to move the market. Huge up cycle. But you can see before its secondary cycle, the first red arrow there at the top, you can see there was a significant pullback, then off to the races. In the following two cycles, again, you can see a good up run, a big pullback here, the second red arrow, big pullback, sideways for a little bit, and then off to the races. And the previous cycle as well, same thing. Big run up, big pullback, and off to the races. Are we going to see something similar here? We've in this yellow box here, we've seen that pullback. Maybe there's a little bit more to come in that pullback. But then what happens next? Will history repeat? We'll soon see. Hope you found that useful. Talk to you all soon.